What do you do when your flagship amplifier is called the Series 1 and you release an updated version that has all sorts of circuit tweaks, component upgrades, and added features? You definitely don't call it the Series 2. You call it the Series 1 Mark II. At least, that's what Blackstar did. And they were kind enough to send it out to me so I could brutalize it with my belligerently bad guitar playing. And they even said that if you don't watch this video in its entirety, they're gonna PayPal me $50 from your grandmother's bank account. Let's do it. Alright guys, hope you're doing great out there today. If this is your first time here at my channel, my name is Kyle, and welcome to Belligerent Studios. What I do here is I take all sorts of awesome, high-gain related guitar equipment, I record it with a simple SM57 setup, and I give you the unprocessed audio on your end. So if you're into E-standard thrash riffs, drop C hardcore riffs, and dudes that inexplicably raise their voice an entire octave as soon as they're on camera, you're in the right place! Consider hitting the like button and subscribing on the way out so you don't miss any more of my stuff. Thanks! Alright guys, so today on deck, we have the brand new updated flagship amplifier from my friends over at Blackstar Amplification. I was trying not to burp while saying that entire sentence. If you guys are unfamiliar with Blackstar's Series 1 line of amplifiers, these are kind of like their top tier series of amplifiers, and they have a few different models that, from what I understand, all have different voicings. So they've got like an EL 3400 watt model, they've got a 50 watt model, a 200 watt model, at least in their older line of Series 1 amplifiers. And all of them are voiced differently. It's not just a power section thing. Blackstar seems to voice their amps around the power tubes that are within the amps. And with the amplifier that I have here, the Series 1 100 6L6, the 6L6 is kind of like their big, thick, and aggressive high gain amplifier. And in typical belligerent amateur fashion, one of my cameras died in the middle of that spiel, so I don't even remember where I left off. But anyways, this is a big, gnarly, high gain amplifier. It's got massive transformers in it, tons of volume, tons of headroom, and this thing is just meant to be Blackstar's final word in an extremely versatile amplifier that'll rip your ears off and slap you in the face with them. And in my case, it's probably gonna hurt because these babies are huge. But with all that being said, you guys should know, in the sake of full transparency, Blackstar have sent this amplifier out to me in order to share with you guys here on the channel. So this is sponsored, I am being compensated, so feel free to take everything I have to say with a massive grain of salt. You're more than fair to do so, but just know, I'm gonna give you my honest thoughts and opinions as I always do. Keep that in mind. But honestly, when Blackstar did reach out to send this amplifier out to me for a video, I was super excited because I honestly have wanted to get my hands on a true Series 1 amplifier for quite a while. If you go way back in my channel's history, I actually did review a Series 1 amplifier, but the one that I reviewed was the EL34 model, and that one definitely is not nearly as high gain, it's not as aggressive, and you could definitely get it there with some work, especially out front of the amp, but like that particular model is meant to be more of a balanced rock and roll amp. So I'm super pumped to actually have the 6L6 here in order to share with you guys because this is the Metal Monster. And Blackstar have made a few updates to this amplifier. They have actually gone through and made a bunch of circuit tweaks in order to kind of get the amplifier a little bit more in line with what people had been asking for them on the original amplifier. So there's like 30 circuit tweaks in here. They've upgraded a bunch of the components. They've upgraded the construction as well. This is a dove jointed, I believe, birch head shell with a steel chassis and a double-sided PCB board. So it is going to be repairable. It is going to be moddable if you want to do that thing. And I can tell you the visual upgrades that they've made, this is an incredible looking amplifier. This brushed black aluminum faceplate seriously just looks killer. We've got 4 channels here as well as controls for our master volume. We also have a DPR or dynamic power reduction. I actually made that up. I don't know if that's what it stands for. Haha, I was right. Guitar buzzwords. But for real, dynamic power reduction, this is essentially a control that sort of acts as an attenuator. If you dial it back, it can get you all the way down to a 10-watt output. If you have it all the way up, it gives you the full 100 watts, and obviously you've got that full range in between. We've got some voicing switches on these channels, and we're gonna go through all 4 channels. And then on the back here, you have mostly a standard layout. We've got an effects loop. That effects loop has a level switch. But 2 things to mention, this is a MIDI capable amplifier, so I'm sure people will be psyched to find that out. And then on top of that, there is an emulated output. So if you wanna go direct to front of house, emulated output, and it's got both an XLR and a 1/4 inch out. So you've got options. And I'll actually show you a little bit of that emulated output later in the video. I listened to it earlier and it actually sounds pretty good. I personally would always prefer a non-emulated line out just so that I can add my preferred impulse response. But that's just me. With it built in, that's just less gear that you have to mess around with. So it's great for the convenience factor, but this thing has 4 6L6 power tubes. It's got 4 12AX7 preamp tubes and 1 ECC82, which is basically a 12AT7. And yeah, as far as features, I think that that's pretty much it. So we're gonna dive into this thing with a bunch of different guitars, a bunch of different pickups, and because I feel like Blackstar's overall, with the way that they are voiced, they sound better on 16 ohm cabinets because they are fairly dark in the higher treble regions. I've also got a 16 ohm Marshall 1960 vintage cab that we're gonna try this amp on at the very end of the video. So you guys are gonna get a taste of pretty much everything that this amplifier can do, except for the clean channel because I'm not some weak loser idiot. And you guys need to remember that if you play cleans, your bloodline is doomed. So with that being said, we're gonna jump into some tones. That intro clip, I was using my Balaguer Typhon Seymour Duncan distortion in the bridge. We were boosting the amplifier with the Lichlerm King in Yellow, one of my favorite overdrives, and we were on the OD2 channel, going into my Mesa traditional 4x12 cab with the stock vintage 30s, SM57 on that V30, no post-processing in anything that you hear in this video. And just to refresh you on what that sounded like, so as you can hear, plenty of low end going on in this amplifier. Got a lot of mids. It's a very round sounding amp overall, so it's gonna be really good if you want those thick and dark high gain tones, that kind of wall of sound thing going on. This is definitely not a super tight, super articulate and modern amplifier. If I had to compare it to something directly, it's definitely in that SLO or Uberschall style of high gain voicings. We do have the ISF controls. That's Blackstar's like whole thing, the ISF or the infinite shaping filter that takes you from American to British depending on where you have it dialed on the control. But even if you were to dial it all the way to the British side, it never gets ultra tight. It's just a big, fat, thick, dark sounding amplifier that's gonna fill up a lot of sonic space. So keep that in mind going forward. You guys know I'm usually all about the tight, bright, thrashy tones. So this amp is a little bit beside where I tend to sit in my tonal preferences, but I think that that intro clip sounded really, really good. In fact, this is my favorite Blackstar amplifier that I've played up to this point. I really have been digging this thing so far, and I'm actually excited to kind of dig into it a little bit more in this video. So that was our high gain tone. Let's do what we usually do. We kind of get that intro clip, that high gain intro clip for all of us belligerent amateurs out there, and then we kind of go back down to the crunch tones and work our way back up to ultra down-tuned belligerents. So let's get those racist Uncle Rock tones out of the way. So on this amplifier, guys, we actually have 3 3 different gain channels. We've got a crunch, an OD1, and OD2, and honestly, all 3 of these channels are capable of a crunch tone. So I've turned my boost off out front, and I'm actually gonna dial in a crunch tone or a low gain tone on all 3 channels so you guys can hear how they differ. For all you weak-ass dad rock blues lawyers out there, we're gonna start with the crunch tone. And I'm using a Heritage H150 that is loaded with Seymour Duncan Antiquity PAF style pickups. Here we go. OD1. So that was all 3 of the gain channels in a crunch type setting. The crunch channel being the most open, but surprisingly, it's also got a ton of bass too. All 3 channels definitely have that kind of martially Kerrang in the high end, but again, as I said in the intro, this amp is just overall like a rounder sounding amplifier, so you don't really kind of get that crazy upper mid cut. It is fuller in the low mids and the middle mids. Definitely fuller in the low end than something like a Plexi. And while it doesn't nail your traditional crunch tones, nothing wrong with the tones that we got out of that. I think they sounded really good actually. And I really, really like the kind of top end, just cuttingness, the aggressiveness of it. Sounds good. So now let's actually see if we can get some man style guitar tones out of this thing using these PAF pickups, because the other series one that I played did not have a lot of gain on tap, but I can assure you that this one does. So back to crunch, let's go full gain. So as you can tell, crunch channel, just that. It's a crunch channel. It gets reasonably high gain, but it doesn't get into the modern levels of high gain. Let's go over to OD1. As you can tell, quite a bit more gain on this channel. This amplifier doesn't get saturated in the way that like a 5150 does. It kind of saturates, the gain structure is different. So it's never gonna sound super, super high gain and compressed. It's a very open sounding amplifier overall. Let's go over to OD2, let's max that gain out. I personally really like OD1 boosted if I'm trying to get the higher gain tones though. So OD1 channel, we have a Keeley Noble Screamer on our board pushing it, which is essentially a modded tube screamer style pedal. Sounds really good. So as you can tell, no problems at all getting into the super high gain realm. And like I said, overall, very round sounding amplifier, very thick. But with all that said, it's time to move on from these weak PAFs so you guys can hear how this baby sounds with some active pickups. active pickups, 3 very different sounds. This thing is reacting quite a bit to the different pickups that are being put in front of it. Frankly, I didn't like any of those tones, but that's because I dialed in each amplifier, or I'm sorry, each channel the same way for all 3 pickups, just so you guys could hear the difference in how it reacted to the pickups without change. So with that being said, let's redeem it real quick. Let's dial one good active high gain tone in, and then we'll move on to drop C. In typical stupid ass me fashion, I forgot to clip my lav mic back on. But yeah, I was really digging that as a drop C tone, especially with that Noble Screamer pushing the front end. It just, again, it's never gonna be like super tight, super reactive onto the right hand. But the way that we got those palm mutes sounding towards the end, I'm sure you could tell by my face, in the room here, they sounded absolutely gnarly. So honestly, for a big drop C hardcore type tone, I would really, really dig this amplifier. So let's do that. Drop C. And just as I had imagined, drop C on this amplifier sounds great. Again, still boosting that OD1 channel with that Noble Screamer. Let's move over to OD2 and just get a straight in tone. I'm really good at my job. So that was straight in on OD2. This amp, in my opinion, excels at down tuning and just trying to get those thick wall of tone sounds. This amp will make you sick to your stomach. And to prove it, here's a baritone. Let's kick that boost off and let's try straight in on OD2. So into OD2, straight in with no boost. It's a little bit dry, even with hot pickups that are in this Balaguer here, but it actually sounds really, really good, and that dryness may help with the note clarity. But with all that said, we still have to check out the ISF, the DPR, and to do that, I'm actually gonna switch over to that 16 ohm Marshall cab now. All right, guys, Marshall 1960 vintage cab with the 16 ohm Marshall vintage speakers on it. We are on OD2. We are boosting it with that Keeley Noble Screamer again. We have the amplifier dialed in, as you see here. So exactly as I knew what would happen, the 16 ohm cab just opens up that top end so much more in my opinion. The amp definitely sounds better on this cab. It has more of that sizzly top end presence overall, and the low end seems to be a little bit tighter. The mids have been, and you probably heard a little bit of the emulated output in that clip as well. So I wanna know what you guys think. What did the emulated output sound like on your end? Leave it down below in the comments, will ya? So again, let's go over to that OD2, direct in, no overdrive. So yeah, again, it's just tighter. It's a little bit more immediate feeling. It's punchier. Again, it's never gonna be an ultra tight amp and ultra defined. That's just not what this thing is. So if you're looking for that, this is not the amp for you. But if you want an amp that covers a lot of sonic territory and gives you a ton of options at the same time, this could very well be the one for you. So, two things. The ISF filter, I kind of keep it over to the left side for the most part just because I like how it sounds in the mids, but I'm gonna give you a sweep of it on the OD channel real quick here. Alright, so as you guys can hear, as you dial it to the right, the mids become a little bit more scooped. It gets a lot more low mid and low end punch, and the top end becomes a little bit more sizzly. So that does alter the voicing quite a bit, moving from left to right. So finally, let's dial that back, and we've got the dynamic power reducer range re-optimizer. So we have it full on right now, but I'm gonna slowly dial it back. Alright guys, that is gonna do it for me today on the brand new Blackstar Series 1 100 6L6 amplifier, the flagship high gain amplifier from Blackstar Amplification. What did you think about the tones that I got out of this amplifier? Are you a Blackstar fan and do you own any Blackstar amps? What has your experience been? Let me know down below in the comments. If you do think that you're gonna pick it up, make sure to check out my affiliate links, Sweetwater, Guitar Center, Zounds. If you use any of those affiliate links, they cost you nothing extra, but they help out my channel tremendously. Thank you for supporting the channel. If you like the video, hit the like button on the way out. Why don't ya? Subscribe if you're not already subscribed. Why don't ya? Huge thanks again to Blackstar for sending this baby out, and I get to keep this, so if you guys would like to see any additional comparisons or content with this amplifier, let me know in the comments and I'll be sure to make it for you. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Kyle here again. See you next time.
You know what this wall is missing? Another amp. There we go.